Alright everyone, welcome back to B Mother Reviews. Today we've got from XM Studios, this is of course Omega Red joining their X-Men line, but they don't release a ton of villains in that line, so it's nice to finally get an X-Men villain for the collection. Should he be added to your collection? Well, let's find out in the review next. Alright, Omega Red is a product of that legendary early 90s X-Men series by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, making his debut in issue number 4 of that series. Arkady Rossovich is his real name, and his origin is kind of a mix between Captain America and Wolverine. He was a Soviet border patrol officer during the Cold War era, but he had two important secrets. First off, of course, he is a mutant. He has some enhanced strength and durability and things. He has a bit of a healing factor, but most importantly, he has a power called the Death Factor, which allows him to emit these spores from his body that infects everyone around him. Now, the average human would succumb and be killed by exposure to this within minutes, but obviously superheroes can last much longer. His second secret, a much darker secret, is that he is a prolific serial killer. Now, once his fellow soldiers found that out, they tried to execute him, but his mutant ability allowed him to heal and escape. Later on, he was caught, turned over to the KGB, and from there was selected as a prime candidate for the Russian version of the Super Soldier program. Now, in this program, he was subjected to torturous experiments, including cybernetic implants, which enhanced his strength and speed and agility and everything like that to even further superhuman levels. But they also implanted his signature weapon, the tentacles that you see extending from his arm. Now, unlike Wolverine, these tentacles are not a natural part of his body, but they are made of a super man-made metal known as carbonadium. Now, this was Russia's attempt to recreate adamantium. Now, they failed at creating a metal quite that strong, but the advantage that carbonadium has is that it is malleable and flexible, allowing him to extend and retract the tentacles at will, and he can ensnare and crush his victims to death. Now, the one drawback to carbonadium is that it is an unstable metal, so it requires a device known as a C-synth to regulate that interaction between the metal and his body. Now, unfortunately for Omega Red, that C-synth was stolen during his creation process by a group led by none other than Wolverine. So without the C-synth, the carbonadium was slowly poisoning him, so he had to go out and use his Death Factor ability to enhance his healing factor, and he would do that by kind of siphoning his death spores through his tentacles and using that to suck the life force out of his victims and replenish his own. So after a few missions, the Russian government quickly realized that Omega Red was just way too dangerous, too unpredictable, too uncontrollable to leave as an operative in the field. So they put his body into a cryogenically frozen state, and it stayed that way for decades until he was revived by the villainous ninja organization known as the Hand. And it's at that point that he made his debut in the comics, and that little backstory with Wolverine made him an instant villain of the X-Men. So, in summary, Omega Red is one bad dude. But will this statue make a good addition to your collection? Well, enough with the backstory. Let's start off with sculpt and design next. Alright, so this statue was designed by XM Studios in collaboration with Studio Hive and the Kacharik brothers, who have both done some really nice work with XM Studios in the past, and it was sculpted by former Shelf Space guest Alvaro Ribeiro, who is a very humble and talented artist. Really nice portfolio as well. Just for XM, he's done Star-Lord and White Magneto, just to name a couple. So as you can see, super talented guy. So let's start off with the base here on this piece. You can see it is a very industrial looking scene here. Some random mystery fluid tanks below his feet. You can see the tubes running in between them here. You got the valves. You got the pressure gauge there. You got the ice and snow all over it. It really gives me the sense that he's just stepping out of his cryogenic chamber, which is very unique to the character and offers a little bit of his backstory, which is exactly what you want from a base. So nice job there. Omega Red himself, on the comics, he is listed as 6 foot 11 inches tall, over 400 pounds, so he's a massive dude, and you get that sense here with this piece. I mean, just the body itself stands at about 21 inches tall, so he is a big dude. I mean, look at the gigantic arm muscles here, and you see the bulging muscles in his legs as well, so this is a mean man that you don't want to mess with. I like that they didn't try to do too much with the costume. Stuck really close to the source material. You can see the signature knee pads, the giant shoulder pads, the straps up his chest and down his back. So again, they didn't try to do too much, and that includes the texturing. There's a little bit up the inside of his legs, the front of his chest and his ribs, but again, not too much. I don't think you need to do texturing over the entire statue. The rest of the statue costume is pretty smooth. Some panel lines, some subtle wrinkles there just to make it look like he's wearing something, but again, didn't do too much. So great job by Alvaro there. There is some battle damage on the costume, some scratches here on the shoulders and the knees. Always in pattern of 3 though, so it gives that indication that he's already been in battle with Wolverine. Great portrait on this piece here. He does have another portrait that I'll show you next segment, but on this one here, you can see the cybernetics down the side of his cheeks. Really nice mouth and teeth on this guy. His forehead and his nose are kind of wrinkled up to give him that villainous stare. So great job there. His hair is kind of flowing in the wind, gives it a little bit of a dynamic sense to this statue. I love the pose of his hands, his fingers, how he's gnarling them like that. Very villainous look. And probably my favorite part is how the tentacles are writhing through the air like that. It really gives me this sense that they're alive and they just look so menacing to me. So really nice job with that. The one part of this statue that you could probably criticize is the pose, and it's not really an illusion. It is kind of an awkward pose. If you try to stand up straight, take your right shoulder and lean it back to your left, and then try to lift your left knee, just like he's doing, I guarantee you, you will almost fall over. So it is a bit of an off-balance looking pose, but I do find if you position it so you're looking straight on, it does help to mitigate that a little bit. And one thing I really like about this pose is it gives you that sense of size. He's standing upright, so you get every inch of that 6'11" frame that I mentioned earlier. So overall, despite a little bit of awkwardness to it, I think it's a really nice job here on this sculpt. Alright, I mentioned this statue does have a second portrait, and you can see it on the statue here now. Although the previous one with the sort of top knot ponytail is more accurate to his original appearance, I'm kind of leaning towards this one here lately because I find you can see a little bit more of his face. Regardless, I think you have 2 pretty nice portrait options for this piece. Alright, let's move on. We'll talk about paint. We'll start again with the base. And although I think the ice and snow could have been done a little bit better, I think overall it's a really nice paint job here. You got the metallic silver on these tanks below his feet, some nice gold and copper accents used around there as well. They gave a little bit of frosting to some of these tubes here, and some nice surface corrosion weathering on these tanks as well, giving that aged look about them. So really nice job, I think, overall there. Omega Red himself, I love this bright, vibrant red they used on his costume. A little bit of a darker finish to the textured areas. Some nice shading to help bring out his muscles. He's got his signature bleach white skin there with some blue shading to bring out the muscles and veins. His pale blonde hair. The armored parts and the tentacles have a nice metallic silver finish there, giving it that carbonadium feel about it. So really nice job with that as well. The portrait is done fairly well. I like the mouth and teeth. The teeth are kind of dirty and grungy, giving him that kind of ugly serial killer look about him. The cybernetics have some nice clean lines on them. The one complaint I would give the portraits is they went a little heavy with the shading through the forehead and around the eyes, but overall, the paint job on the statue, there's really not much to complain about here. Alright, we'll move on to production and build quality here, and we'll quickly run through some of the extras you get inside the box. First of all, you get the packing photo here, which shows you where every piece goes back in the box if you ever have to pack it back up. That's super handy. On the back side of that, you've got your registration instructions. You've also got the QR code that will link you to the assembly video for this piece. Also, as you get with most XM pieces, an art print here of the statue. You can display that beside the piece if you like. So a couple nice throw-ins there. If you are one of the early pre-orders, you will also get this metal plaque here. Just got the Omega Red portrait there. You can display it. It's got a little kickstand. You can put it there beside your statue again. So a couple nice throw-ins that you get with the piece. Alright, so quality of the statue, really not a lot to complain about here. The assembly went pretty well. The one thing you might want to watch that video for is these tubes on the base, just, confirming where they go, where they connect into the different areas. The tubes on mine are cut very precisely. Any shorter and they probably wouldn't reach, so they are just the right length. Hopefully nobody gets one where they are too short. One cool thing about those tubes is some of them have little bubbles in them, giving that appearance that there's fluid flowing inside. So on mine, the back here, you can see the bubbles in there. So kind of a neat effect there. This metal conduit here is flexible. That is important to note because when I first installed this, it was pointing up here in the air and it didn't really look like I could bend it and shape it, but you can, so just keep that in mind. Other than that, not much to complain about on the statue. The parts fit together pretty well. One minor gap below his heel here on his foot where it connects to the base, but not really visible on the statue. You got one minor seam here on this portrait where this little piece of hair, you can tell it was a separate piece and inset into the head. But again, nothing too major there. Otherwise, the statue looks and feels pretty good. Nice quality production here from XM. Alright, it is time to wrap things up here with Omega Red from XM Studios. Now I mentioned he does have a little bit of an awkward pose, but I think the rest of this statue turned out remarkably well. Great sculpt from Alvaro, especially the upper body on this guy. I love the arms, I love the hands, how the tentacles are writhing through the air. You got two excellent portraits here, a nice thematic base for the character. A nice comic accurate suit, and the paint job on the suit is excellent and a great vibrant red there, and overall a nice quality feeling production from XM. So I think if you're a big fan of that early 90s X-Men series, this is a statue you gotta have in your collection. Even if you're not, if you're an X-Men collector, it's always good to have some villains for your collection, and in fact this guy's never been done before in 1/4 scale, so he'll add a little bit of variety to your collection as well. So there you have it, Omega Red from XM Studios. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Make sure you subscribe because we got lots more coming throughout the year, so stay tuned and we'll talk to you guys soon.